some things have happened just recently that are going to take a lot of my time, and it's already taken up some of it. But I want to talk about some of it, and it's pretty exciting. In any event, what the Institute and the Center have allowed me to do is to look over the data in the archives and some interviews that I was able to get for all the people who are still alive, who were around in 1969. And also I went through a lot of media. And boy, was I glad I got a chance to do this. I mean, after 40 years, you don't realize, it doesn't take much to make you happy when you realize that, you know, it wasn't all your fault. So I looked through a lot of archives that went around, that were not around obviously when I was director. But I could see what a lot of it is telling me, and if I had only known. And I'm going to basically talk about first a statement by Dr. Nathan Huggins, who did an evaluation of all of the Black Studies programs in 1985 that have been funded by the Ford Foundation. It was a very good evaluation. They had subsequently several more, and they were all good. I thought Nathan Huggins, he's passed now. He really hit me on the head. I could see what he was talking about very clearly. And then I'm going to talk later on about another thesis that is a product of another friend of mine, or a friend of mine named Don Hagman, who was also passed, unfortunately, but who got me going on a lot of things that I'm glad we had a chance to spend time together. He was on my doctoral dissertation committee, and he was the hardest one. He cracked the hardest whip, but it was worth it. And let's start with what Dr. Huggins said. He said in this, I guess you can see it, in his report, in which he's evaluating all of the Black Studies programs that have been funded by Ford, that this evaluation, this essay evaluation on the present state and future prospect of Afro-American studies, addresses two separate spheres of social concern. First, the growth and change taking place at American colleges and universities. And second, the struggle of blacks for social justice. During the late 60s, these two spheres became interrelated and to some degree inseparable. To understand Afro-American studies, it is thus necessary to consider both American higher education and the changes that he says that they have to go through as a result of the non-negotiable demands that people like Rick Nelson were laying down, and the American Civil Rights Movement. Now, he goes on to talk about this at some length. And what he's saying essentially is that those programs that were not just all about shutting down a university. It was more about trying to provide the same thing that the Civil Rights Movement was trying to provide, and that is trying to open the doors for a little more social justice, and if you would call it that. There were some schools, of course, that were more militant than we were. We looked militant at first because so many things had happened that we had no control over. But it was not the proposal writers who were the militant ones. When I first met Roger Roberts, and I was looking for him for a long while after I got to be director, I couldn't find him, and I didn't know why. I thought everybody had deserted me, and I finally found Virgil, like about 2 months after I became director. And he introduced himself as a civil rights moderate. And I said, that's good, because I think I'm sort of that, most of the time I'm that. Sometimes I'm more of a direct action type, but a non-violent direct action type. But he and I knew we were going to get along. What I didn't know was that he wrote the proposal. I was reading this proposal. It was a really well-crafted proposal. the proposal was done, and when I go back in the archives, I can see everything now. You know, I can see that there were a lot of people on the committee. He was head of the committee. The people on the committee were the people that Huggins was talking about. If you can win these people over, you got a program, because they're going to speak highly of you, and you're going to be able to get some money from the Ford Foundation. But if you hang out with the people who just want to shut the university down, or even not necessarily shut the university down, but just create a lot of mischief, you're not going to get any money from the Ford Foundation. And we fell in the first category, but it looked as though, to some people, I think, we were in the second category. I sent proposal after proposal out. I had the full proposal, and the first thing I did, I sent the full proposal out to Ford, and I got an answer back. And I finally got my hands on it. I went to Ford Foundation Archives, and there it was. The guy who wrote me an answer, I lost it in the interim, sort of went down, and there were 10 activities in the proposal to implement the center. And those 10 activities were all well written. They were terse, it was succinct, and it was just right to the point. Turns out, the person who wrote that, under Virgil's leadership, was probably Victor Palmieri. Victor Palmieri was the deputy director of the Kerner Commission. He's still alive, and he's still got lots of money. He was one of the guys I was going to try to hit up for the Senate. I still may. We're just going to have to figure out. He's doing different things now. He may respond, he may not. But in any event, Victor Palmieri, I saw a note that Victor Palmieri wrote to Virgil, and he said, I don't think the proposal needs to be rewritten. It's good enough as it is, which means he wrote it, right? But he probably wrote it in conjunction with, some of the other good people on that committee. Virgil's committee was loaded with people. 3 of them I had worked for previously when I was a student here. One I had worked for when I was an undergraduate student here. And 2 of them, Vernon Hirsch and Don Hagman, were on my doctoral commission, my doctoral dissertation committee. These were good people, and they fed a lot of good information, I'm sure. And Paul Bullock was on there too. I worked with Paul Bullock. He was probably the most brilliant planner I've ever worked with. The guy, if he put his drink down, and he'll put it down immediately. Once you give him a good question, he'll say, yeah, let's think about that. And then he'll go 1A, 1A, or 2, and it's so clear. And to be able to work with a guy like that makes you have to sort of say, well, how do I get to be like that? Don Hagman was the same way. Don Hagman was one of these socially concerned individuals. I was glad he was on this committee. I should have brought the file that shows you all the people on Virgil's committee. It was a dynamite committee. The proposal looked like it was something that was going to be easy to implement. When I got here, I had worked for 2 after advancing the candidacy. I went for 2 years to Washington, D.C., where I worked for the Manpower Research Office, Manpower Administration Research Office. I learned a lot, but I didn't like the place. I didn't like it either, because it was really segregated back in those days, and you had to live on the backside of town and all that kind of stuff. Helen was furious. So we wanted to get back, and I managed to finagle the brain out of them to get back. We got back. Next thing I knew, I was working for Jess Unruh up in Sacramento. And having met the people that I met, Jess Unruh, by the way, who was Speaker of the House. I guess I'll just say some of these things that some of you were not born when Jess Unruh was Speaker. Jess Unruh and Robert Finch, who was the Lieutenant Governor, were best buddies. These guys stayed up almost all night, every night, just talking. And if you could be in their presence, you learned a lot. So I really came here thinking that I was one of the smartest people in the world. And the first day I got here, of course, I just when he had lost the governorship, he ran also for mayor, he lost both races. He wasn't watching the store. The House split, we had 40 Republicans and 40 Democrats. That was my validator. Can I get some water from somewhere around? My mouth is very dry. For those of you who don't know what I'm saying, my God, this is my right college semester. And 50% of what I take credit for, she did it. And she usually did it better than I did because she's got more talent and grace and she's better looking. In any event, when I got here, I just knew I was going to bring with me, I had been hired by a business school as an acting assistant professor. By the way, I looked on the paperwork for I got this from the archive. All of the acting assistant professors, I'm not on there, for the year of '69. So apparently I was carried, the whole freight was carried by the business school freshman. CZ's program didn't pick me up until the next year. I see the next page, I'm on the next page. So after I left the center, and I remember having a long conversation with Saxon, he gave me a raise. I guess the only way he gave me a raise is put me in the faculty development program. And I was still a consultant to the center. In any event, what I learned from the archives was that well, my mouth is so dry I can barely.
Somebody's breathing.
I should have asked for some water before. Thank you. That's not better. The things that I read in the proposal when I got it in '69, there were 10 activities. Some of them had to do with going back to the community and taking programs into the community to, and I can read you the actual language. It's really probably activity 3 will solicit funds from the government and private foundations to finance the program and provide for maximum participation of the residents of black ghettos in the projects of the center. That turned me on. You know, I always felt I was a really lucky person. Somehow, a lot of lucky stuff was happening to me. But we left a lot of people behind. And we didn't get here by ourselves. Some of those people did something for us. We got to get back. You know, Helen and I talk about this all the time. I won't read it all 10 of them, but I'll read you the ones that were relevant to what I'm going to be talking about. Number 10 was, the center will house a Bureau of Urban Affairs. And the reason being the urban crisis is largely the crisis of the African American minority group. Man, that's my stuff, you know? The Bureau of Urban Affairs will channel the resources of the African American Center into the black community. All right. That's what I want to do. Bureau of Urban Affairs will maintain the center's interracial clinic. Well, I don't want to do that, but that was, I felt that was, I could set these things up. I knew people. I met all kinds of people, especially in Sacramento. And some of them even in Washington were relevant. And I was writing to these foundations executives. I was learning a lot from them. They were writing me back. They were telling me, don't send us all this stuff. Break it down. You know, break it into single parts and then send us one at a time. And I did that. I sent the library and a Team Post project that I wanted to do under the under this 10th activity, and a number of other things that I was really trying to get. I hired. It turns out I could hire any people I want. I could hire. You know, they never asked me. They tried to give me people that I didn't even want. My salary budget was apparently unlimited, but my program budget was nothing. It was zero. I mean, every time I said, you know, I could use some money to buy some books for the library. No, well, Bob, there's no money. Well, you know, I'm supposed to have a library. No, okay. What about this journal? No. And I see now that what had happened is that, in fact, the language is here. It says in the archives that at the last day of the meeting of the Regulars Committee, Rosemary Parks, who was sort of Chancellor Murphy's point person in all this, she kind of set up all these things, and she did a brilliant job. And that she probably was the one who put the students in the chairmanship roles, because they were each of these three committees, workshops, and some of them would meet all day, was headed by a student. And Virgil headed up the one called the Urban Affairs Committee. Now, Urban Affairs and Research Committee. Now, I can see what Virgil had said is that he wanted to somehow, well, this was Rosemary Parks' words. She said that all of the urban affairs and community research was going to happen through something called the Bureau of Urban Research and Development, called it BIRD. And in her language, she had she was telling Chancellor Murphy, Chancellor Young by this time, at the end of this whole process, Chancellor Young was the chancellor. Well, he was still vice chancellor, but he was sort of in charge. She was saying to him that all of this community activity was going to happen under BIRD. No, I didn't know, first of all, that Virgil had written this, or by the time I met him, I could have asked him all these questions. But I could see why I wasn't getting any money. All of these things were supposed to happen under BIRD, not under the Black Studies program, and if that Black Studies Center. And if I was going to take the job with that knowledge, I probably wouldn't have taken it, because the other things was important things, but they weren't really my cup of tea. I would try to get somebody else to do them, and that's what I was spending most of my time doing. I was going out trying to find people, because the students apparently had thought ahead. Virgil's committee was the education committee of the BSU, and he told me during that interview that they had been excommunicated by BSU, so they couldn't meet with the BSU, and he had to bring a gun on campus, because sometimes there was altercations. But they insisted on being the education committee. He doesn't mind me telling you, I asked him, can I tell you all this? And he insisted that they follow up on the way he was doing it. Some people didn't like the way he was doing it, so he was out there a couple of times. In any event, he didn't get hurt, and that's the important thing. But now I'm looking at a program that has no program funds and activities that I have to go out and beg money for. And so I went out and begged money, and I got some. I got some money from Mary Jane Hewitt for the library. She gave us the first, and unfortunately, Maliki Asante thought that he opened the library, but I have pictures showing that we opened the library, and we had Oscar Sims and I get the pictures of me and my wife and some of these good people who helped us open the library on the second floor, Campbell Hall. It was a great night. We had champagne and lots of, as many books as $10,000 would buy. We had lots of shelves, but $10,000 doesn't buy that many books. But that was the beginning, and the people who were working there were volunteer at the time. We had a budget that was supposed to cover, once we got the program money, the personnel, but we didn't. We never funded that. So it wasn't always open, but it was a start. I could go down lots of other things like that, which we started. Virgil had talked to Glasgow to be research committee chair. That was one of the jobs in the proposal. And Doug gave me a hard time. Every time I went to talk to him, he was a beautiful guy, but sometimes he just sort of talked street. And I could never get him to commit. I said, Doug, come on, I got to be able to write this down. I want to see if I can get you some money, because there's supposed to be some money associated with the job. And he said, well, I don't have any students. So I ran to Virgil. And I said, Virgil, I need some students for Doug. And Virgil and Art Frazier went to Doug. And they said, we'll be your students, and Bob can pay us. And I could pay salaries, you know. So he still didn't do anything. And so I was thinking about getting somebody else, you know, because I figured this was going to be the cornerstone of the center. I needed somebody, either I was going to write what the research aspect was going to do, or somebody else needed to write it. And we finally sat down and we talked about it some more. He was going to do a benchmark study. I said, anything, man, just get it started. But he still didn't produce it. And one day, we were over at CZ's house, and he let me know that he thought that I was too cocky, and that I was trying to take over the black faculty and staff. And I said, man, the last thing I want to do is be the head of black faculty and staff. But he still didn't do anything. Then one day, I think it was the day we had the police swept the campus. I never saw his daughter. I didn't know what she looked like. But I saw a young lady who was going the wrong way on police sweep. On a police sweep, they come like this. And if you go this way, they got you. You got to go that way, you can outrun them. So that phalanx was coming down. I saw she was going the wrong way, so I ran out, I grabbed her hand, and I took her right way. Turns out it was Doug Bascom's daughter. And so she told Doug, and Doug came to me the next day. He said, man, you're the hero of my house. And I said, what happened? He said, well, you know. So I said, oh, well, that was your daughter. So then Doug finally got down to business. He started writing the thing. And I said, oh man, so almost everything, all these 10 things, like they happened only because they were things that had to happen. I had to find somebody to do it. Because I didn't have money, I had to use some factor substitution principles and get, for the 10th thing, I had written some legislation when I was up in Sacramento. And for a committee that was chaired by Leon Rao. And I was still a committee consultant for that. So I was going back to, you know, take care of that legislation. I got the idea, why don't we have some teach-ins down here? It was a legislation on experimental schools. And everybody loved it. We had Panthers and us people in the same meetings, and they all loved it. It was sort of a precursor of the, what you would call the magnet schools today. But it was independent schools. And the people would take their schools out of the regular system and make it appeal for the money, and then hire people from all sorts of places. And it never passed because the governor was Reagan, and he just blew pencils every time. But I still thought we could get people out to talk about it. So I hired a guy named Jim Roberson. He went out, set up teach-ins. I hired a guy named Phil Henderson. He worked at the Survey Research Center, and they did a bang-up job on a survey. He went out and surveyed. We were showing, we got more people for a second go-around from the legislature to sign up for it. Still didn't pass. But it was the kind of thing that I thought the center, if it really got into it, could do. And these things, because I didn't have any money, I was getting a little ticked off. And I realized that we were doing sort of what Huggins was saying. We were trying to give back to the community and have as our main purpose, not again tearing up the university, but to try to provide avenues for social justice, and you'll get lots of friends, and we had those lots of friends. Virgil had them actually before I had them. And they came in, and they were really supportive of the center. I was amazed at how many people were really heavily supporting the center. Just about everybody I talked to, but I still couldn't get any money from the chancellor's office. And that was the only place, as a center, as an independent research institute, you can write to the foundations. I wrote to the foundations, but it takes money to get the money. It takes time to get money from the foundations. Well, in any event, I want to go down to the second thesis that I said I was going to talk to you about, because it ties in. And it also is what I really want to talk about. These are some of the things that I learned by being director of the center. How do you run a center? How do you apply for money? How do you get this kind of stuff going on? I had talked to a lot of people I was much luckier later because these people, now I knew many of them by first name, foundation executives. Later on, I found that, after I quit the center, and I had to quit the center because I had 2 years left. I had a 7-year window for my dissertation. In those days, if they didn't like you in the department, you had 7 years, and then they cut you off, and you died. But I spent 5 of those 7 years out in the field. I think my dissertation, I had 2 years. When I walked in the door, I had 2 years. So I had to leave after that first year, and I felt I had 1 year left to write my dissertation. One of the guys I really liked and who was really kind to me was a guy named Professor of Law School. And he was a good friend of Ben Aaron, and I was a good friend of Ben Aaron, so I met Don Hagman through him. He was also a good friend of Vernon Hirsch, who was also on my committee. Don Hagman had this, I call it the Hagman hypothesis. Local governments, cities, villages, towns, townships, counties, school districts, and special districts use their powers to change or refuse to change their exterior boundary lines in order to disadvantage racial minorities. He never tested that with real data because he didn't really have the wherewithal it would have been too hard. But today it's not too hard. And from my way of thinking, that was the kind of thing I would love to have been able to do here when I was director of the center. You either have to have a lot of money to send people in the old days you have to go through all kinds of folios and pages and stuff like this and see if you can find the data to test that. But if it's true, if it's refutable, if you couldn't refute it, then that is probably the basis for a great deal of the wealth inequality that we see. Black people, when people measure wealth inequality, very often they use income and earnings. That's not a good measure because black people don't look, they look like they're about the same in terms of income and earnings. But in terms of wealth, in terms of what you own, what your assets, black people are on zero. White people are above the line as a group. But black people, there are as many below the line as there's above the line, and they're not far above the line. So in terms of inequality, the most assets that black people have is usually their car and their house. And the car may not be running, so that what they have maybe is a house. So they a house is an asset, and black people don't have too low. I mean, they have a lower ownership ratio than white people do, but they it looks as though when you look at the data, because they go out and collect this data once in a while, it looks as though they don't own any housing. The fact is they do own housing, but the housing that they own is subject to what Hagman's talking about. City authorities, and you can't see this, it's invisible, it's under the ground, very often will extend services only so far, and they will sometimes go around black areas. I could test that when Helen and I went on the Freedom Rides. We could see that on the way from Jackson, where we sat in, and at on the way to Parchman Farm. You could see these houses, you could see these cities, and there would be like a railroad track going down the middle, literally, and on one side of black people, the other side of white people. And on the side where the white people were, the streets were paved, all the way up to the driveway, where the black people are, no pavement, dusty roads, and the houses very often are sitting on septic tanks, if that. The worst place that this, I drove through South Carolina too because I wanted to get down in and see where I came from. where my folks came from. I came from Philadelphia, but I want to see where they came from. This was the same as true down there. I called up and I said, I'm down here in South Carolina. I'm going to rent a car. I want to go see where you guys used to grow up. My mother was passed at the time. So my cousin told me, well, they didn't have real streets. It was just route this and route that. And if you went on the white side of town, they had streets. But on the black side of town, it's routes. And again, the paving and you can tell the street sweeping and all of these services did not exist. This meant that the people who owned those houses, certainly the value of those houses were not nearly were not equal to maybe the same size house, the same number of rooms, everything the same except no services on the black side of town. So what Don Hagman was pointing out there has been given a name now. It's called Miscible Underground. That is, the municipality leaves you out of services that they give to everybody else. The value of your property is less, largely because you don't have any property really. You just got a shell and all the other things people get, running water, street sweeping, electrical cables, all these things are good on one side of town, but they're bad on your side of town. So the value of your property is much less. If that's true, that could explain the good portion of the wealth inequality that we see when we look at the data. Because the data is always set out there. They just look at results. They don't really go down and look at the houses. But when the assessors go down, they give them a value. Now, I'd like to test this. Turns out we now have tools to do that. The tools that we have that we can do that with is called geographic information systems. Geographic information systems are incredible. When I stepped down from the chair at LMU, I had lost my am I going over Chinese relevant?
No, you're fine.
I lost my course admission, so I have to teach another course. And our evaluator said, "You guys aren't teaching economic geography?" And we said, "We're not going to teach it." And said, "Well, you're not doing that." So I said, "Well, you're right. Okay, I'll teach it." Problem was when I economic geography today is not what it was when I took it. You know, now you got to know GIS. So it turns out the best GIS factory in the world is in Redlands, California. And I went to Redlands, and everybody else was 15 years old, and I was 75. So I raised the average up to about 50. So, but it was fascinating, and everybody was so absorbing this stuff so fast, you know. And I said, hold it. What did you just say? And they said, well, you got to start with a base map. All this stuff is public data. The base map, you can get it off. You can get it off MapQuest. You can get it off Google. But you got to check out the projections, because these projections are all different. You got to know something about how some maps are. You've seen different maps. You look at the map of the world over here and the map of the world over there. They look different. That's because they got different kinds of projections. Now the projections, if you get the projections right, then you can put overlays on them. We used to have to do it with cellophane paper or plastic sheets. Now you can do it with a computer, and it looks like you're putting an overlay. But your base map and your overlay, you can overlay. Once you know what the first base map is called a shapefile. Once you get your shapefile and your coordinates correct, then you put these other things on, these other layers on with the same coordinates, and you can begin to start comparing one by one with each layer what's going on. And the last one you might want to put on is race. And then you can see where everything is going. You can see where the black people are. And if he's right, what we'll find, and he is right, because it's already been done by a number of agencies that are doing it primarily as lawyers. They're suing these cities that have been doing this, sometimes for 50 years. The people have been asking for 2 generations, and they won't give them services. And once the Southern strategy hit, when Nixon talked the Dixiecrats into coming to the Republican Party, and Reagan went down and gave the code by going to Philadelphia, Mississippi, that he was for state rights. Then what happened as a result was that there's been a tremendous decline in the services, but you can't see it. Like I said, it's invisible to the naked eye because it's underground. It's declining in all kinds of services. Helen and I were at a meeting with James Meredith, the guy who single-handedly, opened the University of Mississippi. James Meredith said that services now, education services, all kinds of services, are worse off now, are worse now for black people than they were in the 1960s. He says, you're going to go to Parchment, go now. This is when you ought to go to Parchment. I mean, it's worse now. If you're going to protest, protest. He never was one for protesting in civil rights. He liked to do it by himself. But he was a brave man. And that walk against fear, fear won because he got shot. March against fear. But I want to talk to him about this because I think that with GIS, what we can do is we can begin to look at all of these places, especially in Mississippi. I want to start in Mississippi. I want to look at, they're going to fight you for the data. Once, even if it's public data, they'll say, no, you can't have it. So you got to go through all the courts and everything and get the data. But once you get it, what you can find is a test of Hagman's thesis. And you can probably quantify it. And when you quantify it, you got a case. And it turns out that some people have done it, but on a very small scale. They could take one little small town at a time, but they win. Once they win $10 million for the town, And they have to, the people have to cough it up because you can show through the court records that they've been asking for these services, but they cut them off at the black community. Now, what can happen, because it's, again, we're in the modern age, is that we can either try to get, like the lawyers do, out there one at a time, place by place, or we can begin to develop our own cadre of people who know GIS and who know these problems and who want to do something about it. If we don't have enough time or enough energy to do it, as a matter of fact, in any way like the lawyers do, because they're going to do these. But if we can get enough people, and I think Black Studies programs are the ideal place, interested in pursuing this kind of thing, then one of the things that we want to do, the Freedom Riders are going to have a 50th anniversary in May, is sue the state of Mississippi, have a tribunal, and tell them, we got you, we know all of what you've been doing, and we know it's been destructive all these years, because this is also health problems that happen when people don't get the right kind of services. And we want to put you on. We don't put Mississippi on trial. Well, we found the guy who put the Comfort Woman, who put Japan on trial for Comfort Woman. He won. He then worked for the Romans. The Romans were the Romans what we used to call gypsies. They have no place to go because so many people, so many of the countries since the wall fell have been kicking them out. He also won for that. His name is Barry Fisher. He happens to be a LMU lawyer. He works at LMU Law School. He wants to get involved in this. Another guy named Myra Simmons, who I worked with in Sacramento. I haven't seen him for 4 years, but now he's excited. He wants to work on this too. He worked for Palmieri. And if I can get, and this is what I'm saying, this is turning into a sales pitch. If I can get just an interest from enough places, and we can stay in touch as we build this up. I'm going to talk also, I got a guy who's going to be talking at USC. He teaches a clinic there. I'm going to talk to the law school at LMU. I'm going to talk to the regular campus at LMU, out in West LA. And if I can just find out how many people might be interested in pursuing this kind of thing here. Because it seems to me that you have a number of ways you can go. you have a department, not a Black Studies department, but you have a degree, a major and a minor, right? And you can hook one of these things in as a, not necessarily a requirement, maybe just an elective, but point out to them where it would be going and how we can get enough bodies to do this all at once. We can accomplish it. We're just going to have to try to do like we did in the Freedom Rides. Get people to come from all over the place and get their assignments. And one by one, you're going to have to fight for the data, like I said. You'll probably win because it's public data. But it takes you some time. You have to develop, lawyers will have to develop strategies to get it. If we can do this, we may, by the time of the Freedom Rider 50th, we may be able to, like I say, sue Mississippi because we can show them exactly what they're doing to the people. Mississippi is not the only one doing it. But the reason the Freedom Riders went to Mississippi, because they were the worst ones. And they're still the worst ones. And everybody knows they're the worst ones. And they're glad of it, they're proud of it. And this, it seems to me, is going to be my calling for the next few months until May of next year. Because if we can get it done, and we have a small committee, like I said. Oh, and Hank McGee, one of your former directors, he's in on it too. He's up in, but he knows all these other people I'm talking about. He's up in Seattle now, but he's all for it. Hank McGee is a lawyer par excellence. I didn't realize what a good lawyer he was until he and I went up to defend Angela Davis, and we walked into we found a way to get into the meeting of the regents, the UCLA lobbyist said there's a way you can get in. So we got in, and he and I had written out this document the night before, and we read the document to the regents, and they were going to fire her that day. Instead, they didn't fire her that day. They told Chuck Young to fire her, and of course he didn't want to fire her, but so they had to fire her finally on some other trumped up charge. That she was carrying guns to jail or something like that. But she did lose her job. But you know, Hank and I, and standing there, I mean, we developed a lifelong friendship from that point on. And there's and this guy Ira Simmons and Barry Fisher is the name of the lawyer who has been taking these tribunals, international tribunals, to defend people who nobody wants to defend. And we have, I think, we got a dynamite group that we're going to start with. And now we're going to call in Diane Nash. She was the one who really kept the Freedom Rides alive. And a number of people whose names I won't go down. But this is now a pitch. If I can get interest here, I'm going to go to other places too and get the other places, because it doesn't take long to start this the GIS part of this. And it's interesting. People who learn GIS, they can get a job right away. The problem is many of them go right to work for national security. You don't want to go there, but they soaking them up like sponges. I think, and that there's not enough other people, not enough to go around for other things. But I think I should shut up so that you might have some questions. We got 10 minutes for Q&A. And I overran my time, I suspect, right?
No.
Did you, were you on the plane with us?
No.
Okay, all right. Anyway, so no questions? All right.
What level of GIS knowledge do you need?
Well, you don't need, to get started, you don't need there's a certificate that you get after you get, about 5 or 6 different courses. Mm-hmm. And each of those courses really, you can do, if you do all day, you can do it on a weekend. But you don't need to get that level. If we hire some people who are legals who also know GIS, they can sort of plot out the kinds of stuff that we need so that you'll be at sort of at the beginning level, but still able to do some of the things that we need done. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably the way we're going to go. we're still talking about how we're going to structure it. Part of it's going to be how many people we're going to have. Like I say, factor substitution. If we don't get enough people, then we're going to have to go to ESRI, the place I was talking about in Redlands, and see if we can get them interested, because they're the gurus, and they can do it a lot faster than if we do it with beginners. But they're also going to want money, and so I have to come out with my hat and try to get some money from. I know Alex got lots of money, but the rest of us,
You know, I recommended that you take it out of your trust fund, but you didn't want to do that?
My trust fund is untrustworthy. Yes.
Let me make an observation. When I was working on my dissertation, I found out some things in Philadelphia that I even have a copy of the document. The municipal government made a statement, and they wrote it out, that North Philadelphia would be allowed to die on the vine.
Oh, yeah.
This was in 1964.
I never saw it, but I heard about it.
And they were going to wait roughly 40 years. And this is a black community.
Right.
They're going to wait 40 years when the values went down and then rebuilt.
Right.
And I was interviewing a minister who lived in that area, and he said, you know, they closed down the police station at 15th and Diamond.
Right.
I didn't have the heart to tell him that I knew what was
You knew
going
what was
on.
going on, right, yeah.
So,
But you should have, that, even though, you know, I mean, that, because ignorance is not bliss. And those things, when you go to Philadelphia, and I know you've been back there, you can see it. You can see exactly what they were doing. And those places that used to be housing projects, they just fallow now. And,
yeah, and one more observation. I lived in the northern part of the city, and I remember you get on the end of the line there, and they would hose it down every week. I got they'd hose down the subway stop. I got off at South Street, and I saw a cigarette butt, and I had to do work at the YWCA. They had chunks of stuff to go through, and I spent a whole month at the Y. The cigarette butt moved 6 feet. No hosing. And that's right in the city of Philadelphia. There was a definite difference what happened in the wealthier part of the city as opposed to the poorer part of the city.
Right.
So you don't have to go to Mississippi to find the
that's right.
expertise. You can find them anywhere.
No, and I that's absolutely correct. What I'm saying is that in order to expose this, we need to go to the belly of the beast. We need to go to where the worst is going on. And we need to show that we're willing to fight with the toughest opponent. And if we do, then the rest of them will probably say, well, they kicked Mississippi's butt. I mean, that's the reason we went to Mississippi's Freedom Ride. Because we knew that it was us against Governor Barnett. You know, he said, let them come in there. We got something for them. We're going to put them in parchment. Now, you know, they'll last about a day, but he didn't realize that when you go into a cause, you'll last for as long as necessary. And that's what I think is missing right now. You know, we don't have causes. Some people are too comfortable. We need to find ways to get people involved in something which will take not just their time, but their passion. So they'll see what the result and what the end product can be. And if we all know we're in that together, then we'll work on that together. And we'll produce, and we'll know we're doing it for the people who we've left behind. Because a lot of them are in these houses which are really unlivable. But they have to live there. I mean, it's like being in Haiti. You know, they don't have any choice. And I think and I think back, the stories my mother and others used to tell me, things were pretty bad where they were. But they knew that right across, you know, just not too far, was a nice person, a nice house that person had, and they could only go to back door. And this kind of stuff has got to stop, you know. And the only way you're going to stop it, of course, is to tell people out loud, we're going to stop it. And they're going to then they're going to try to find ways, because every one of these other programs that have done something along these lines, they found that the moment they started looking for data, they locked it out. They found ways to say, we don't have that data. We don't, no, you don't know. I'm sorry. And you have to go through several layers of legal beagle, and you finally get what you're after. But I think that, you know, Hagman didn't call this the Hagman hypothesis. He should have, because now they have a new name for municipal underbounding, which just destroys the mind. Municipal what? But it is the same thing, and it is what we need to. I like to give them credit for it, because I submitted a proposal to Ford Foundation to fund it. They even sent me one of their own writers, Ford writers, and he wrote the thing out, and we sent it back, and he said, sorry, we don't have any money. And I said, you've been stalling me. You know, I wanted to test this. I know, and that at that time, and that was 1979, it would have taken me a lot longer to test it. But the point is that I would have learned then, and probably have something going now along these lines. This is going to be a lifelong quest for me, I think. I'm just going to keep going until we get something done, yes.
What place can just an undergraduate student, you know, from freshman through year 5, what can undergraduate student do to help this situation cause?
Oh, this kind of thing, like I say, the undergraduate students will learn faster than the graduate students. It's a matter of getting those who are really interested undergraduate students who have some need to give back to the community, and who believe in social justice, who believe in you know, equity.
I mean, like, where can we, if we spread the word, where can we get in touch with you?
Oh,
Are you leaving
that's a question
information
you're
for
asking me.
us to say where is the groundswell supposed to go with?
Well, get in touch with Alex Tucker. He knows where you can get me, and she just left, where I will point her out to, Anna Christina.
Or you could just give your email address
Or
now.
give my email address, and I think I might even have some cards. Let's see if I did. Once in a while, Helen reminds me to bring my cards. And if she doesn't, don't forget.
Now you're trying to blame everybody but himself.
Yeah, right.
You know your email address. Come on.
Right. Oh no, my email address you can have. It's my first letter. My first name is R, and the first 7 letters of my last name is Singlet. So R Singlet at lmu.edu.
Can you put anything in the subject line to draw attention?
Yeah, and put in the subject line municipal underbounding, or the Hagman hypothesis. That's better. That's that'll let me know that you're interested in testing this thesis.
Can you repeat your email again?
Yes, it's rsinglet at lmu.edu. And what's your name?
My name's Makila.
Makila. Okay. And yours?
Marcy
Marcy.
Brooks.
Marcy Brooks. Okay. Thank
Can I
you.
just add that if people are interested in GIS, they have a geography class that's taught here at UCLA, and they also have a graduate class taught in urban planning. So if you're interested in getting involved.
Yeah, I saw those on the. I'm they fill up quick, and I'm gonna try to get in touch with them at that level. I suspect they're already full of requirements, and I think what we need is not people who are in it at that level, who are graduate students already, but people who are just learning and excited about it. And I think we can make them more excited. Thank you. Okay.